The world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everybody, it's your host Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. Some comments are meant to provoke outrage. Others, however, reveal something deeper and frankly more dangerous about who is considered legitimate. Well, my guest today, Tamara Garvey, artist, a skilled one at that, in her new exhibition called Winter of Discontent, responds to the latter, confronting a far too familiar and corrosive refrain echoed by people like J.D. Vance: the woman's worth, credibility, or stake in the future, well, it's all measured by motherhood, compliance, or silence. What I love about Tamara is she doesn't argue back. She creates back. Her work transforms anger into inquiry, grief into form, and dismissal into something that demands attention. By doing a call for commentary around the country from women of all different shapes, sizes, voices, and places in the world, Winter of Discontent isn't just a reaction to a moment, it's actually a real record of what happens when women refuse to shrink in response to this kind of behavior. In fact, as I always say, yep, that's right, it's alchemy in action. So this exhibit doesn't shout, it holds. And in so doing, it asks a really powerful question. What happens when women turn dismissal into art and art into agency? I'm so thrilled to talk with Tamara about art as an advocacy, about making meaning in moments of backlash, and about what it looks like to claim space creatively, publicly, unapologetically, and of course, not being shushed. Let's listen in. Welcome, Women Advancing listeners. And today we're doing something a little more expansive than I've done historically. And I know once you hear what the conversation is about, you'll understand why, especially in these crazy times in which we are living. Today, I'm so excited that we are joined by a very talented artist, Tamara Garvey, to discuss her Winter of Discontent exhibit that is going to be available down in Savannah at the end of this month, January 30th. And for those of you who aren't able, you'll still be able to go to a website and get the gist, and you're going to want to once I shut up and let Tamara speak. So Tamara, welcome to Women Advancing.
Thank you so much for that great intro. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be a guest.
It's my pleasure. Let's just talk a little bit of a background because, listeners, really one of the things that Tamara is doing with this upcoming exhibition, I guess I'd call it, is really using art as a form of advocacy and vision. So, Tamara, I'm really excited for you to talk and share a bit about the whole notion of and the thinking behind Winter of Discontent. So, take it away, Sister Sledge.
Okay, so I first came to this, I was just came across this kind of think piece essay online last summer that was about the log lady from Twin Peaks, which was a kind of surrealist show that aired for just 2 years in the early 90s. I wasn't like an enormous fan of Twin Peaks, but the character of the log lady, she's this very whimsical, she's a middle-aged woman and she walks around holding a log in her hands and she thinks that the log speaks and that she understands what the log says. And so in the course of the show, it's about a murder being solved by these men in town, the police officers. So the log lady shows up very, very occasionally on the show, and she's just like, my log knows what's going on. Ask the log can tell you. And they look at each other and they think, oh, this crazy lady, she's like this witch running around town. So I came across this random essay that I'm just going to read you the subtitle of the essay. It's called Ode to the Log Lady, a cross between a village idiot and an oracle. The Twin Peaks character cradling a piece of wood invites us to look beyond cliches of womanhood. And I just thought this was so funny. It's just such a ridiculous, whimsical description. So I started reading the essay. I got into the idea of just doing a series of paintings of this log lady and just exploring her as a character. And
Yeah.
I was tickled by this. I pitched this idea to a friend of mine who's not an artist, but just a really smart person. And she was like, yeah, this is a funny character. It's a funny idea for a show. But, what if people coming to your show, like, if they haven't watched the show and they're not around the same age as you and they don't know this one particular character? She was like, this is a little bit narrow. Will people really, will a lot of people relate to this? And I
Right.
came away and was like, okay, that's a good note. I should really think about that. And I went away and I kept kind of sketching this log woman and log lady and doing a little research. And I don't know what happened, but very quickly after that, something shifted in my head. I think it was just like the unrelenting barrage of assault of news and terrible things coming at us all the time. And something in my head shifted, and I guess came across this like J.D. Vance quote about the childless cat ladies, which he actually said in 2021. It's a few years old, but it's always floating around in the news a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Something just like fell into my head, like these puzzle pieces shifted, and suddenly I had it. And I had this whole larger connecting thing where I thought, oh my God, I am going to go ahead and do these paintings of this cross between the village idiot and an oracle, this middle aged woman. But I want to pair it with real women responding to this horrendous quote by one of our political leaders, kind of attacking all of us, all of women. So I couldn't tell you what the event was, but something shifted. I suddenly had it. I thought, oh, I'm going to ask real women to respond to this. I'm going to record their voices. The show is going to be a combination of paintings of the log lady and also this whole sound element of real people. I want to elevate real people's voices. And then as time went on, I realized that in the backgrounds of all the log lady paintings, I wanted it to be different conceptual, serious or surreal images in the backgrounds that were going to be different symbolic backgrounds about womanhood. So it's a very long way of saying, but that's how I came to all the pieces fell together pretty quickly once I thought about it. And so then that was about 6 months ago. That was last summer. So I've been chipping away on this big series of paintings for the entire second half of last year.
It's so funny, the visual that comes to my mind is literally like tink, just things, a
Yeah.
Rubik's cube coming into alignment, right?
Yes,
Uh,
exactly.
which is fantastic. And what made you feel like, okay, you know what? I'm going to respond to this craziness through art versus getting up. I can think of what an answer would be
Yeah.
versus, fighting with just more words, more blah, blah, blah.
I know. Well, the funny thing, and I know you wanted to touch on this. I used to have a podcast too until
Yes.
last summer. I had inherited a podcast from another artist in town in Savannah, this really nice guy named Rob Hessler. He had done it for 5 years, and he was interviewing local artists about their practice and their concepts and their materials. He did it for 5 years, and then he handed it off to me, which was a huge honor. I did it for 3 years. I had expanded it to where I talked to artists and authors and musicians in Savannah. And when it hit right just before the 3-year mark, I thought, I've really enjoyed doing this, but it is a whole lot of labor, like, unpaid. It's a lot of research, just a lot of time to do it. And I thought, I'm coming to the end of it. I'd like to be done. I'm going to hand it off to a friend. So I did that. I wound it down. I handed it off to a friend. It was last summer. And I just thought, well, I'm ready for new artistic challenges. And one of the last interviews I did was with a local artist who is non binary. And at the end of our talk, their name is Max. We were both talking about how we were so upset by things politically and that we would love to be doing political art, but neither of us knew what shape it would take. We'd sit there, feel thwarted, not know what exactly to paint. And so we had this like energy in us that we felt like we wanted to say something. So fast forward, maybe a month later is the end of the podcast. I suddenly have a lot more space in my life. Exactly then is when this idea came to me. It really does feel like in my head, I had a certain amount of space, of volume. And as the energy for the podcast was able to drain out, I literally had like space for like another big project to filter in and fill up the limited portions of my brain. And then the funny thing is that in the fall, Max, then who, Savannah's a really small city. All the artists, we see each other, we go to each other's shows. Max put on a group show of political art and I, caught up with them and I was like, that is so funny that one of the last interviews I did with you was us both saying how we wish we could do some kind of political art and neither of us knew what shape it would take. And I think it just takes some time. It just has to like have some time to filter in your head and for you to realize what exactly you want to be painting. And so that's what happened.
That's fantastic. Well, the thing that I love about this too is it's literally, and it's so true. When you make that space,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us did this. At least I had a similar situation last August. or July, August, and I made space, and literally 18 days later, something fabulous dropped in my lap.
Yeah,
And
it
it
really is
hon
uncanny.
right? And it was honestly something that I probably wouldn't have naturally thought of for myself, and yet it makes so much sense, and it connects all the dots. Sometimes we have to kind of get out of our own way,
Yeah. And I
right?
think and also for creative things and something that you're gonna be making, I think people underestimate how much, like, time and space and maybe relaxation you need to be at in your life in order for something to like I was saying, I wasn't searching out all over the place of like, how am I gonna make this log lady idea better per my friend's advice? It just shifted and happened to me in my head because I had a little extra space and time. I think people underestimate how much of the creativity you just sort of like happens after your brain has been ticking away in the background.
I was gonna say that you receive,
Yeah.
actually, as opposed to force and push, which is,
Yes.
by the way, let's just call it, I know this is a bit juju, but I don't care, Kelly Juju resides. That's a much more feminine manner anyway, because that's your intuition more likely
Yeah.
than
I
not,
can see that.
right? And I also just like to that first, and it was fabulous doing the podcast, that was essentially you receiving from another, someone else's thing.
Yeah.
You made it your own, great. But now this, winner disconnect, this is your thing,
Yeah.
all in. So talk a little bit about you launched this open call, inviting women to contribute their thoughts and feelings. Were there any surprises you had about like what came back to you emotionally or politically or thematically?
Yeah, it's interesting. So what I did in order to get this out there is I had to, I got a Google Voice number, which I'd never done before, and then setting up the settings for it so that I'd be like receiving texts and voicemails without anything actually ringing. So it's a
Yeah.
different voicemail. What I did was I set up a Google Doc and I just made this link public to anyone who had the link. And I just did this like big text, one piece of paper saying, at seeking women and people assigned female at birth to lend your voices to an art show. I did a little description. Here's the JD Van statements. This is, I believe that it's appalling for a public figure to be making statements like attacking the motivations and character and usefulness of 50% of the population. I would love to hear your thoughts. Voicemail preferred or text is fine. And I gave my Google Voice number and then, waited. And so I would share this like link to my Google Doc around on my social media. I said, I'm looking for people to answer this from all over the country. Please feel free to share. I'd love to be getting women's voices from all over the country because another thing I wanted at my show was to like have a map with pins of where all I heard from people. I wasn't looking for it to just be Savannah. So I wanted it to really get out there. So I did receive in the end, I'd had in my head like this number. I was like, I'd really like to have 100 people. I just had this idea, this round number.
Yeah.
I really tried. I really pushed my link out there as much as I could. I ended up with about 53, 54 people. So not as many as I'd hoped, but I'm just like, I did my best. I really tried. But I did get people from all over the country. I did definitely get strangers who it was clear someone had just shared the link with them and someone's sister, someone's cousin responded to it. They said, hey, I'm Doris from Seattle, Washington. I was getting messages
Yep.
from people I didn't even know. So, and then a funny thing, as it went on, I discovered that Google Voice, you can leave a voicemail for up to 3 minutes and then it cuts off. And so you'd have to call back and leave a second voicemail. I discovered this because a couple people left a long 3-minute voicemail and it cut off in the middle of it. And I had to text them and say, hey, I love what you were saying. Your last thoughts were XYZ. Would you mind so much like calling back and continuing? So then I added that to the Google Doc being like, attention, if you're talking for a very, very long time, please keep an eye out. It's going to cut you off. So that was a funny thing is that some people had so much to say that it spilled over into multiple voicemails. If people left me a text message, I just recorded their voicemail in my own voice. And what I'm doing is I'm stringing together all of these individual voicemails into one long sound file. And the other funny
Nice.
thing, I would not have even had the idea to ever do any sound element of my art if I hadn't done the podcast. Like it would never have occurred to me to even try this. So the fact that I know technically now how to just the bare basics of editing, where I can like string together a bunch of different things into one sound file, I have the podcast to thank for knowing how to do that.
Right.
And as far as surprises, what I love about the things I'd receive is that it's a real mix of you can tell some people who just got on the horn and like started talking and was really cathartic and they just went on and it spilled into everything they were upset about politically, which is great. And then some people you could tell wrote it out and it was very some people were incredible writers, incredible thinkers. And so I would have a variety, like a whole gamut of things, from people like being very emotional, going from topic to topic, to some people who are lawyers or working at think tanks or something. And we're just like attacking with surgical precision what JD Vance was saying. So it's really incredible. I have a whole gamut of voices. I got people from all over the country. So I'm really excited to, have this sound element be a part of the show, and to have this map showing where I heard from people from.
I love that. And I think I'm a huge fan of sound
Yeah.
myself. I mean, I'm visual, but really the sound is that just resonates with you. There's certain things, and especially too, I mean, I don't know, it goes a little deeper, anchors it, I think, to a bit.
It's real people, the real voices. Like, they're starting out, they say the first name, the town they're from. It's just a real person. I didn't make this up.
The log lady, there's also some other visuals and kind of cultural archetypes that are related in there. So you got witches, you got suffragettes,
Yeah.
you got outlaw women and folk heroes. Why was it important for you to situate these, sort of this contemporary misogyny within a much longer historical and symbolic lineage?
I guess from the very beginning, I was like, well, there would be these screenshots of the log lady that were available online, and that's what I used to paint her. And she's always facing forward. She's cradling her log. She's looking at the camera with a little quizzical sort of Mona Lisa smile.
Yeah.
And the background needs to be something, right? So I really quickly, when I came up with the idea, before I pitched it to this gallery who is showing me, I had a bunch of thumbnails, and I said, it's going to be the log lady over and over and over again. The repetition is sort of the funny, interesting thing, but with each one has a different background and different symbolic just aspects of femininity. So like you said, one is about suffragism. And for each one, also, then I had the opportunity to do research. Like, I had to research into symbolism about each thing, the history of it. I wanted to make each background really layered and to be real and not just a made up thing. So I wanted to take the opportunity for all of the square footage I have on each painting to say something. So one is about suffragism. I ended up doing research into suffragism. One is like a Thelma and Louise background. Two of them actually ended up being Ruth Bader Ginsburg themed ones. One I'm really proud of and really excited about is a Woody Guthrie themed one. And yeah, one is woman as a devil, one is woman as a witch. So just different, interesting symbolic backgrounds. Some of them a little more serious, some a little more whimsical, but each one is like very, very researched. And so with the wall text at the show next to each painting, for the people who are nerds like me and really like reading, I have a couple paragraphs of research about each painting of like, what this tree means something, this moon means something. This is the history of, people burning witches in the US, like, et cetera, et cetera.
I swear I want to fly down there to see it.
You should.
You know, and thank you for doing it in the first place, right? I
Thank you.
mean, that kind of,
You're
to
welcome.
me, kind of goes without saying. Why do you think society is really afraid of women, period? But when women refuse these like prescribed roles and trying their damnedest
Yeah.
to drive us back into it, because I swear to God, more and more each day, I feel like it's Handmaid's Tale come to life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's very scary. I mean, why? It's just like, why does the patriarchy have to be a thing? But
Right, yeah, exactly.
yeah, like that's the entire point, is for some people who are like physically stronger to be able to have a whole other segment of the portion that they can keep down. And in order to do that, it has to be through like fear and legal reasons and subjugation and physical fear and, being afraid of being injured and needing to turn to someone for quote unquote protection. And that's how, we ended up having these like family units where, you get a bum deal where you don't get to have your own money or your own credit card or work. And in response, you work in the home and someone supposedly, quote unquote, takes care of you. Not a good deal for most people.
Yeah, no kidding, not at all. So, also being both artist and yourself a woman,
Yeah.
how do you kind of hold that balance between, the creator of this as an artist and then a woman living in this whole moment? I mean, do you think that being a woman, does that give you a greater, more in-depth mouthpiece from which to like bring this to life?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. From the very beginning, when I issued this call, I was like, it's only open to women or people who were, like I said, assigned female at birth, just basically kind of not wanting cis men. And at the very beginning, I had like a friend's very nice husband who I was describing the project, and he was really excited. He was like, oh, I have things to say about that JD Vance
I
guy.
have
He says, I'd
thoughts.
love to help. And I was like, listen, I really appreciate your energy on this. I was like, I really want my project to just be women's voices. I was like, but you being a white guy, if you have thoughts to say about JD Vance, I'd love for you to like put it out there and talk to them directly of what you think about them, for you to be able to use your privilege. And like the whole deal with these men is that the only people that they listen to are other men. So
Right.
the few times that other men did approach me and they were like, "Oh, I'd love to participate. I have thoughts. I'm on your side too." And I was like, "I love that energy, but what I would hope is if you could like speak out publicly and use your maleness to show other people
On
that
that
you
male
care about this."
platform.
Yeah. I was like, "For my show, literally this is just for us." The deal is that the idea that this one man has like spoken what he thinks about us as women, this is our chance to push back and say, no man gets to define us who we are. We get to define that, each of us, for ourselves, not as a group. We're not a hive mind. Each person gets to say that for themselves. If I had other men speaking in the exhibition, even if they were quote unquote on our same side, it just is sort of like subbing in another man's voice for the same
Yes.
man's voice. So from the beginning, I was like, no, like the opposite of a 1950s clubhouse that says no girls allowed. Mine was like no boys
Voice aloud. Sorry, just us.
allowed.
So, you talked a little bit about, and I hear you on that. And again, thank you for that too. You talked a little bit earlier. You made reference to the fact that there's quite a few layers. You've got, log lady, and then there's the background. You also use, I noticed, lots of flowers and trees,
Mm.
natural symbolism. What about nature, or what does nature allow us to say, or you in this case, to say about women and resilience and power that language alone cannot? Is it a different depiction of
Yeah.
femininity?
I think it's interesting that, I mean, I don't know how this started, but almost every tree or plant or flower there is has imbued symbolism for it. Everything has been way back. I don't know if it's the Greeks, the Romans, whatever. Like different flowers and plants have symbolism that are just in them. So, like when you're sending someone a bouquet of flowers, if you wanted to, you could do research and like pick the flowers that symbolize what you're actually trying to say to the person. So,
Right.
for example, in one of the paintings that I have that's a Ruth Bader Ginsburg themed one, I have her surrounded by flowers and it's black eyed Susans because in the course of my research, I just saw that black eyed Susans symbolize strength and tenacity and resilience. And I thought, this is a great flower for RBG. So,
Yeah.
this is an example of like when I'm showing my paintings in the gallery, next to each one, I have a couple paragraphs of info because, most people and me too, until I looked at this, would have looked at it and been like, oh, that's a pretty flower. But, I tried to really imbue each one with like very specific symbolism. But I mean, to answer your question, there was a whole during COVID when everyone was home and there was less pollution and less traffic out there and all the nature was regenerating. I actually did a series of paintings then about seasonal flowers and about the symbolism is just that like an individual flower is kind of delicate and, could be crushed pretty easily, but the entire system comes back every year. The
Yeah.
system as a whole is resilient and cyclical and it comes back and it regenerates it increases during the spring and summer and then it goes fallow and dormant during the winter and comes back again. So I always have been interested in this idea of nature as a symbol for an individual being able to be crushed a little bit, but the whole system of flowers is being powerful. And the same could be said for individual people and individual women, that time has gone on and
We're still here.
yeah, exactly. Just for, individual people, we just the idea of the strength in numbers, the unity of us, the cyclical nature of our struggles and our fights, and how as time goes on, we have to keep fighting and we're hopefully ticking forward little bits at a time, but we're constantly fighting.
Yeah. And I think there's also an evolution of our resourcefulness,
Yeah.
right? I hate that so often have to do workarounds, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's what's going to get us to where we need to get. And that's what we have to do right now. Okay, forget it. We could sit and whine, or we can just get it done. So I appreciate that. Hopefully one
Yeah.
day, you
That's an
know,
interesting thing. I mean, that I guess that kind of touches on like the internet as a whole, that with new technology, there are new ways to hurt people, but also new technologies for people to share their voices and band together and share things that have happened to each other and to organize and get together.
that is a really good point. I was just looking at a quote just came through my feed the other day, and it was talking about how The solstice or the dark is also an opportunity for the light to shine through because it compares that contrast.
Yeah.
And just to remember, it reminded me, at least I should say, that there's a dark and a shadow side to each. It's the age old. So which one of those wolves are you going to feed?
Yeah.
And some days it's easier than others.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just frustrating that there still has to be some of both alive when it just seems so unfair. So art is so often just kind of dismissed as emotional rather than truly consequential, that is not what I believe, but there are some, which is why, quite honestly, I think sadly, so many schools are losing their art programs and art funding, right? Because it's not seen as necessary. It's seen as a nice to have. So
Yeah.
there's not really that understanding of how it fuels the very thing that they want, which is innovation.
Yeah.
Right? And connectivity, and frankly, power in a lot of different ways. It gives voices to so many people who are just see the world differently, neurologically diverse, all sorts of things. So, what do you believe art can do culturally, politically, that things like a bunch of hot, well, I already know that one. I just led the witness, that policy debates and pundits can't?
Well, that's interesting. I wanted to it ties kinda right into, one of the paintings I did is, like, Woody Guthrie themed.
Ah,
So, I can kinda use this as a metaphor to answer your question, but
yeah.
and I hadn't been I was familiar with the song "This Land Is Your Land," and I knew of this famous photo of him where he's, like, has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he's holding his acoustic guitar, and it says, "This machine kills fascists." So, in the course of last summer, when I was saying that, like, I wasn't even forcing it, just ideas were falling into place, and it was just, like, very kismet. I thought of this image of him, this machine kills fascist image, and I started doing research on that. So I'm gonna read just a little bit about
Please.
what I came up with on Woody Guthrie. So he started writing this quote on his guitars in 1943. They say he borrowed the phrase from workers in an American factory supplying the Allied war effort during World War II, who wrote it on their lathes. So Woody Guthrie believed that music, like culture, has the power to defeat right-wing extremists and their anti-democratic ideas. He fought back using ideas, language, music, and the shared desire to build a better future together. The "This Machine Kills Fascist" message became linked to his guitar and to his purpose. So when I thought of this image and I started doing this research and found all this about Woody Guthrie, and I'd never realized that his folk songs were so, he's a little before my time. But when I did research on him, it turned out so in my painting that I do of the log lady as Woody Guthrie, she's holding her log, and on the log I wrote "This machine kills fascists," which
Nice.
I was just like, "This is so funny." The log is wood, his guitar was wood, these ideas, it ties in perfectly, I can write the same thing. So I have this painting where she, like, has a harmonica, she has a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and in the background, I wrote some of his lyrics of his songs because and this is just, like, to show the cyclical thing, how things are ticking forwards a little bit, but it's the same stuff over and over again. He had a song that was about refugees, he had a song that was about literally defeating fascism, he had a song this is so crazy. Woody Guthrie had a song called "Old Man Trump" that was about
Oh,
Donald Trump's father, who at the
no.
time Woody Guthrie was living in New York, and Donald Trump's father had a lot of apartment buildings and had very racist practices of who he'd let live
Yes.
in the buildings. So Woody Guthrie literally has a song out there called "Old Man Trump" about these discriminatory, like, housing practices. So I wrote some lines from this song "Old Man Trump" in the background of my Woody Guthrie painting. It just is like I was like, "What a crazy tie-in. This is wild." But the idea just this is a long-winded way of answering your question about that I kind of took this inspiration from, oh, Woody Guthrie. It's the song "This Land Is Your Land" that I grew up kind of singing in elementary school. Wow, this is just one of many, many songs that he was literally talking about the power of art and music to push back against literal fascism. It's crazy, right?
Yes, which is amazing, and it also speaks to how some of these practices go through generations,
Yeah. Like,
right?
why are we yeah, he was dealing with this during the Depression and World War II. Why are we doing this 80 years later?
Yeah, exactly. What the heck? How did this happen? So, yeah, because I wanna talk a little bit about repair, this notion of sort of repair and all of that, and I know a lot of your works reference the need for healing, and
Mm,
it's just that's one of the things I love is it's not you don't just it's not critique. You're literally going, "Okay, collective responsibility. We can heal," kind of trying to see and aid people in getting through to the other side. as
Yeah.
opposed to just bashing the other side again and again and again and again. Because my experience with this is that's a great way to just keep getting yourself deeper and deeper and deeper in a groove, which is not going to be so great. You're not going to make you feel good. In your mind, what does repair look like to you? And who's responsible?
Yeah, I liked a lot of the messages that women left me, people touched on all different facets of their response to this, but over and over again, people just said they just lifted up, and it was no matter whether people were responding who had kids themselves or didn't have kids. Everyone was on the same page, just saying, "Women do so much for our community. When I go out and volunteer, it's women who I see out there. When you go to even if, things for children like at the PTA, people helping at schools, whether
Mhm.
they have kids or not, people out there marching on the front lines at these rallies, at so many women." And a lot of the messages I was getting from people was everybody noticing this about each other and just pointing out how strong, how hardworking, how tenacious we are, whether we have kids or not. Everybody is doing what they can, what time they have, what money, what time, what energy, like taking what your own personal gifts are in the world and what you have to give. And if everybody can know enough about themselves to know what they have to give and give that, then we could really, really get somewhere, you know?
Right. If everybody did their one little part, it's very,
Yeah.
I don't know. When we spoke, it just reminded me of, well, I'm going to refer to it as the little drummer girl as opposed to the little drummer boy. But it is. It's like, okay, what piece can you have and give?
Yeah.
And no piece is too small. Every little bit helps. So for the folks who are going to come and see this,
Yeah.
what do you hope they reclaim when they move through the exhibit? And how do you hope that, what do you hope they feel?
Yeah. So I'll say a little specifically at the show, I have 16 paintings. 8 of them are kind of small things, and they're I have a whole series where I have a little painting of a log with a colored background, and then
Ah,
I just a lot of the when people were leaving me their messages, I was, I did a whole transcript of everything, and I pulled out specific quotes I really liked that I wanted to elevate. So I have a bunch of little square colorful paintings where I just in the background just wrote, just stringing together my favorite lines from people's quotes. So when women come to the show, the women who live in Savannah, they'll come and they can look on the squares and find their little quote, find
well,
their
that's
thing.
cool.
So I have a bunch of the paintings are small ones like that, and then I have 8 that are bigger that are of the log lady with these symbolic backgrounds. And then I'm gonna have a log, like an actual log that I've hidden a little MP3 player behind, and there will be headphone lines coming out of the log, and you can walk over and put on the headphones, and then that's how you're gonna listen to the women's voices.
The audio,
So it'll
nice.
be literally listening to the log, like how the log lady said.
Oh,
She's like, her
that's
log lady spoke the truth. You can go over and listen to the log. But then I had this idea where I was like, well, you're going to come to a show, you're going to walk over and listen for a second, but it's like an hour and a half, this entire, sound file I have. So I want people to be able to read as much as the women's words that they want. So I'm also going to have a printout, I'll have a binder you can flip through. I have a transcript of every single message I got. It's like an 18-page document. So if
wow.
people are really into it, they can walk over and flip through this binder, look for their quote, look for their friends' quotes, read through all these things that I got. I'm going to have a map with pins of where all I heard from people.
Love that.
And then the final thing that I came to sort of late in the game was I have a second log, which my very kind boyfriend, who's been super supportive about this, both emotionally and with actual woodworking help with this log, is we created a bunch of holes in or little cuts in the log, and I'll have a little pad of paper with a pen. So if you want to then speak back to the log, you can walk over and write a little note, and there's a place to stick your note into the so you can
Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's
so there'll be a log to listen to and then a log to speak back if the show has given you some thoughts and you want to return your words back to the log.
ah,
So it's
love that.
what I'm calling this a multimedia exhibition because I have all my paintings, I have these 2 physical logs, I have a sound element. So hopefully it's a fun, interesting space for people to be in to be look at all this, and the fact that I have this collateral material, I have this binder with 18 pages of text to flip through if you want to read, if you want to look at the map and see where people responded to, if you want to talk back and leave a note for the log. There's sort of little bits of interaction. And like I said at the beginning, I've really never done a show that was this serious or conceptual or that involved this much planning. So I am very excited. And the other aspect is that since I've had to be very public and publishing this link and, once every few weeks posting on my social media and being like, hey, ladies, do you want to respond? As it gets closer and I'm like, oh my God, now it's people are going to come and see these paintings. I hope the paintings look good because I've been very public about like the show in general and the call for entry. So it is this like pressure feeling as it gets closer where I'm like, oh, I can't hide it all. This is a very public endeavor from the beginning. So I really, really hope that people come and are like, this was worth coming to. These are good paintings, you know?
Well, yeah, talk about vulnerability,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But I'm sure they're amazing. So really quickly, and when we'll have, we'll have a link and all sorts of things in the blog, but what are the dates? It's January 30th through
Yeah, I'll read. And yeah, I have a link to the page on the gallery website. So this is very cool. They gave me a 3-week show. They're open on the weekend. So there's time on Saturday and Sunday over the course of 3 or 4 weekends to go see the show. And I also get 3 events, which is awesome. So it's going to be on view from January 30th through February 21st. There's an opening reception on Friday, January 30th. And then the next week, there's a thing in Savannah we always do first Friday of every month where all the galleries open up and you can bop around and see the shows. So I actually have a second reception that following week, which is Friday, February 6th, and are thinking about this, which I think is true. The woman who runs the gallery, she said, the people who go to the first Fridays are not necessarily there for you. They're just out for the evening going around to the galleries. They might just stumble across this. And the people who come to your reception will be because you invited them and they're there for you. So this way you sort of split it where you get 2 different events, not one overcrowded event. So I have these 2 Friday evening events. And then on a Sunday, I have Sunday, February 15th, there's going to be an artist talk where I guess there'll be chairs set up. I go there. I'm going to be interviewed by the woman who runs the gallery, who's also a friend of mine. And I have to somehow be able to string sentences together in front of a crowd of people. So look forward to that.
Oh, I think that sounds amazing. Well, the thing that's great about that too is you're going to have your group that already supports you.
Yeah.
And we'll also actually get to be, reminded of why you're so fabulous. And then you're going to have this, you're going to be able to draw a whole new crowd and a
Yes.
whole different generation, I'm betting,
Yeah.
First Friday group, which is really exciting. I'll be really excited to see how that all sort of transcribes. So, in closing, we've just been talking about, oh my gosh, how women have been going through this forever, right? Resisting, surviving, all that sort of thing. What to you right now feels urgently unfinished? Kind of
Me.
like, what doesn't? Where do I
I know.
begin, right? I mean,
I don't know where
I
to
thought
go.
it
I
was
guess.
finished.
I mean, I will say it's funny. So a woman in town interviewed me and she kind of asked a question. She was like, how are you feeling after all this? Do you feel positive or negative for the future? And I was just like gasping like a fit. I was like, I don't even know how to answer that. And she said, you're right. It's really hard. Who knows how to answer that? I was just like, what I can say is, the it made me feel honored to have been able to provide a conduit for lots and lots of people to give their opinions. Like I said, everybody spoke based on what felt good to them, either extemporaneously going off, very emotional, or writing out like with surgical precision an argument against it. Everybody got to give their literal voice. And at the end of a lot of people's messages, they thanked me for the opportunity. They said it felt cathartic. So I guess in closing, I don't know what the major thing is to work on. I just like I said earlier, everybody has their little bit that they can do, that they can provide. And my thing that I feel comfortable doing was doing this art project, putting my own paintings out there with my own research, what I wanted to do, and then this kind of element that I had no control over, which is what other people were going to say and what messages they were going to leave me. And yeah, I'm excited. I feel honored and proud that people trusted me to leave their opinion and put it
Yeah.
on record, and that it will be played and that people can come and read their words and listen to their thoughts. And I just feel proud to have been able to done this and stuck with it and that it's actually happening.
Well, I'm just really psyched. Talk about one, the amount of intentionality in this is stupendous.
Thank you.
Second, to your point, talk about being the change you want the world to be. Everybody, right? Stepping forward and showing up and doing their piece. So,
Yeah.
Tamara, thank you so, so much for making the time. Last really quick question. I always have to do it. So I got to be consistent. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would say the advice that I've given to other artists coming up is you have to be prepared that you're going to be told no a lot and be apply for things and be denied and not get into shows or not get into opportunities or not get, the freelance job you want. You just have to push forward. Everybody was told no a ton of times at the beginning and continuously through our careers. I still apply for things all the time and get turned down. But the only difference between me and someone who I was in art school with at the same time who isn't still doing their art is just that they were told no a few times and let it stop them. And I was told no all the time and just kept going. That's the only difference. Like I tell the young artists this all the time is that your professors are applying for things all the time and getting turned down. Older artists, who are doing it full time are applying for things all the time, getting turned down. You just have to keep going. It's just what happens.
I think that's such a great reminder for everybody because it's really true, especially when someone's new or getting started or extending into something that's not their usual activity or realm. It's so easy to think, okay, great, we'll see. I got this. No, I don't belong here. It's a sign. And the truth is, no one is going to sit there running around like, oh, everybody says no to me. But trust me, they do.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. It's like, brush yourself off. Okay. And really, honestly, they always say rejection is, direction. So every no that happens, as we were just referencing earlier, it's making space and giving you a little nudge in a more powerful direction for you.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
It's always good. Positive universe always, always, always has your best interest in mind. All right, Tamara, thank you so, so much. Congratulations with this terrific accomplishment. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to see it. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way I can get down there that weekend. Anyway.
It's open for 3 weeks. So
I know.
We've got a lot of events, but thank you so much for taking the time to, in turn, elevate my voice. I really appreciate it. I'll send you links and images. You can post whatever you like. And Thank you to everyone for taking the time to listen.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your new year.
Thank you, you too.
Well, wasn't that great? I thought it would be so interesting to have the conversation with Tamara because when I received the link and the questions, I just thought, what a great idea. And I love this notion of utilizing art as an advocate for us. So KB takeaway number 1 is look for other avenues and unusual manners in which to make a point, reveal the situation, because one, that's really quite resourceful and quite clever. And it also really opens up and gives greater accessibility to others to get involved in the conversation in the first place. 2, be prepared to get no's, lots of no's. We've all gotten no's. Not everybody talks about them, but we've all had them. And the only difference of those who have made it to the other side is because they did just that. They didn't let them stop them. Little spoiler, you're going to get a lot more no's, the more unusual, and perhaps the more deliberate and provocative your commentary and your thinking is, the more it forces the status quo to be stretched, the more friction it causes, which makes sense. But just be prepared to do that and just know, if I'm really getting them all uppity, I must really be onto something. So with that, I'll just say thank you so much for joining me here on Women Advancing. Let me know if there are other folks that you would like to hear from, what topics you'd like to just hear this year. One of the things I'm really doubling down quite a bit on are intergenerational entrepreneurs and just intergenerational wisdom, workforces, trends. Second also will be taking a look at a group called Rebels with a Purpose, whereby I'm going to have at least one episode a month be devoted to someone who's a social entrepreneur who's really mixing it up and forcing us all to think and giving us the opportunity to do good. Thanks so much. Look forward to continuing the conversation on the next Women Advancing.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.